Welcome to the Bull Moose Network. Let's begin with a critical story shaping the future of the American workforce. The U.S. labor market is at a crossroads in 2025, facing a mix of challenges and opportunities. From job openings outpacing seekers to the rapid rise of artificial intelligence and automation, the labor landscape is shifting beneath our feet. Federal and state policies are also in flux, redefining everything from wages to workplace protections. But amidst these, workers are taking charge, deploying innovative tactics that are flipping the script on corporate dominance. Let's break it all down. The 2025 labor market is a study in contradictions. Employers lament so-called labor shortages, but workers tell a different story. Low wages, stagnant benefits, and exploitative practices dominate the narrative, and the much-touted skills gap? Often it's an excuse for businesses unwilling to invest in worker training or update their outdated business models. Meanwhile, automation and artificial intelligence are celebrated for their efficiency, but often leave workers to fend for themselves. Job displacement is the order of the day, with little support for retraining or job placement. It's clear the system prioritizes corporate profits over worker stability. But hope is not lost. Across industries, grassroots movements are forcing companies to confront their practices. Unionization efforts are surging, and workers are demanding wages, transparency, and dignity on the job. The narrative is shifting, and it's being rewritten by those who refuse to settle for less. Now, let's turn to the policies shaping this new labor landscape. Spoiler alert, they're not exactly designed with workers in mind. Employers often view federal and state policy changes, such as adjustments to overtime rules and minimum wage laws, as burdensome. But these changes barely scratch the surface of what workers need to survive. Wage increases in some states remain far below what's needed to keep up with rising living costs. And then there's immigration. Restrictive policies create artificial labor shortages, giving corporations a convenient excuse for exploitative practices. In addition, the conversation around automation policies largely ignores the human toll. Displaced workers are told to adapt or perish without meaningful retraining programs or safety nets. But workers aren't waiting for policymakers to act. They expose these systemic failures and push back through unions and grassroots organizing. Workers are stepping up to defend themselves when policies fail to protect labor. As workers fight back, they are doing it with creativity and resolve. Two tactics stand out in this labor reckoning: quiet quitting and salting. Quiet quitting, often misunderstood as laziness, is a boundary-setting movement. Workers are rejecting unpaid labor and overwork, demanding respect for their time and energy. It's a silent but powerful form of resistance against exploitative workplace cultures. Then there's salting, a labor tactic straight out of the union playbook. By taking jobs with the express purpose of organizing unions from the inside, workers are proving that any job can become a union job with enough solidarity. Thanks to salting, industries once thought to be unreachable, like retail and tech, are seeing unionization efforts thrive. These tactics send a clear message from walkouts to strikes. Workers will no longer accept crumbs while corporate profits soar. Grassroots movements amplify these tactics, showing that collective action still packs a punch in 2025. Across industries, workers are staging strikes, walkouts, and union drives to disrupt businesses as usual. From Amazon warehouses to Starbucks coffee shops, these efforts force corporations to address demands for fair wages, safe conditions, and basic respect. Of course, corporations are fighting back with union busting consultants and outright intimidation. But workers' resolve remains unshaken. These grassroots actions prove that progress isn't handed down from boardrooms, it's won through solidarity and action. The labor reckoning of 2025 isn't just about wages or workplace conditions. It's about reclaiming dignity in an economy that often devalues labor. Workers are proving that solidarity is the most potent tool we have. Every strike, walkout, and union formed strengthens the message. Workers are the backbone of the economy, and we refuse to be treated as expendable. From here, let's examine the Service Employees International Union, which has been making its own waves recently. The American labor movement has taken a significant step forward this week. After 2 decades of separation, the Service Employees International Union, or the SEIU, has rejoined with the AFL-CIO, or the American Federation of Labor, and Congress of Industrial Organizations. This reunification adds 2 million members to the nation's largest labor federation, which now represents nearly 15 million workers. It's a powerful move aimed at revitalizing labor's influence in an increasingly challenging landscape. Let's explore what this means for workers and unions nationwide. SEIU's return to the AFL-CIO is more than symbolic. It's a strategic decision to unite 2 of the country's most influential labor organizations. With 2 million new members, including healthcare workers, janitors, and food service employees, the AFL-CIO strengthens its ability to advocate for fair wages, better benefits, and job security. SEIU's statement highlights the significance of this move, describing it as a renewed effort to claim workers' power. With approximately 60 million Americans expressing interest in unionization, this reunification could help address growing demands for representation and collective bargaining. This decision marks the end of a 20-year split. Let's look at the history behind it. In 2005, SEIU and other unions left the AFL-CIO to form the Change to Win coalition, citing disagreements over organizing strategies. Since then, both groups have worked independently to support workers, but challenges like corporate union busting and political resistance have underscored the need for unity. Recent years have seen a resurgence of labor activism, with high-profile strikes and organizing campaigns driving a new push for collaboration. Local efforts like SEIU Local 503 rejoining the Oregon chapter in late 2024 signaled a broader trend towards solidarity. SEIU's return to the AFL-CIO represents a transformative moment. Together, these organizations now represent nearly 15 million workers, combining strongholds in industries across the economy. This partnership enhances their ability to support workers at companies like Amazon and Starbucks, where employees are leading high-profile unionization efforts despite corporate resistance. It also positions the labor movement to push for legislative reforms, such as the Protecting the Right to Organize, or the PRO Act, which aims to simplify unionization and curb anti-worker practices. The reunification of these unions is more than a headline. It's a pivotal moment for the labor movement. As worker activism grows across the nation, this partnership underscores the power of solidarity in confronting systemic challenges. Together, these organizations are poised to shape a new era of advocacy for fair wages, better protections, and workplace equity. Let's shift focus to White Pigeon, Michigan, where elevated PFAS levels have disrupted daily life. Residents point to Ox Paperboard, a company now facing legal action from a Michigan Attorney General, Dana Nessel, for alleged environmental violations. Known as forever chemicals, PFAS contamination poses serious health risks and raises questions about corporate accountability. Let's take a closer look at this issue. PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, are synthetic chemicals prized for their durability and resistance to degradation. Found in firefighting foam, food packaging, and industrial processes, PFAS pollute the environment and are linked to serious health risks, including cancer and immune system dysfunction. Michigan is home to over 200 documented PFAS contamination sites, making it a hotspot in the fight against these pollutants. The contamination at Oscada's Wurtsmith Air Force Base highlights the widespread nature of this crisis. Firefighting foam has tainted water supplies and rendered fish unsafe to eat. Addressing PFAS remains a monumental challenge for communities nationwide. Ox Paperboard is accused of discharging PFAS-contaminated wastewater into local waterways. 7 violation notices issued by state regulators allege years of environmental neglect. Officials argue that the company prioritizes profits over compliance, despite the well-documented risks of PFAS exposure. The consequences for residents are profound. Public advisories have disrupted traditional activities like fishing and hunting, while local businesses reliant on tourism and outdoor recreation report significant losses. The contamination has eroded public trust in both the company and regulatory agencies as residents demand faster cleanup and greater accountability. Understandably, community groups are stepping in to fill the void left by corporate and governmental inaction. Grassroots efforts like Oscada's Need for Water have inspired similar movements in White Pigeon. These organizations play a crucial role in raising awareness, hosting public forums, and advocating for stricter environmental regulations. Education is central to their mission. With nearly half of Americans unaware of PFAS and its risks, activists are working to bridge the knowledge gap through outreach and resource distribution. Their efforts have successfully pressured lawmakers to act and corporations to prioritize remediation. The issues in White Pigeon are part of a much larger story. Across Michigan, over 200 PFAS contamination sites highlight systemic flaws in chemical regulation and corporate oversight. The Michigan PFAS Action Response Team, or MPART, coordinates state-level responses, but progress is slow and lacks transparency. Federally, the EPA has set stricter drinking water standards, limiting PFAS levels to 4 parts per trillion. However, enforcement challenges and legal pushback from corporations like 3M threaten long-term progress. Addressing PFAS contamination is costly. The EPA estimates $630 billion is needed for water infrastructure upgrades over 20 years, with taxpayers shouldering much of the burden. This raises critical questions about corporate responsibility versus public liability, underscoring the need for stronger accountability measures. Corporations made the mess. They need to clean it up on their dime, not ours. The PFAS crisis in White Pigeon and beyond highlights the urgent need for environmental justice and corporate accountability. Grassroots advocacy remains a vital force in pushing for change, but it's clear systemic reforms are necessary to protect public health and the environment. Residents can help by supporting advocacy groups and attending public forums and voting for leaders committed to meaningful reform. Together, we can actually demand the accountability needed to safeguard our communities and foster a healthier future. Water is life, yet the increasing privatization of this vital resource threatens communities, ecosystems, and equity nationwide. Let's explore the perils of privatizing public water, from Michigan's groundwater battles with Nestle and Blue Triton brands, to California's corporate controlled water systems, and Hawaii's catastrophic mismanagement consequences. Let's begin with Michigan. With its vast freshwater resources, Michigan has become the focal point in the debate over water privatization. Nestle's groundwater extraction operations, now managed by Blue Triton brands, have drawn widespread criticism. These companies withdraw millions of gallons daily for just $200 annually per extraction site, reducing stream flows and depleting wetlands. While public outcry and legal challenges have slowed some of the operations, the companies continue to extract significant volumes. In 2021, Blue Triton reduced its withdrawals to 288 gallons per minute, skirting state permitting requirements. This issue contrasts sharply with the Flint and Benton Harbor water crises, where residents still struggle to access clean, affordable water. Michigan's experience highlights the dangers of prioritizing corporate interests over sustainable resource management. Now let's shift to California, where privatization has deepened inequities during one of the state's worst droughts. At the center of the controversy is the Kern Water Bank, a once public groundwater reservoir, now controlled by the Wonderful Company, owned by billionaires Stuart and Linda Resnick. Their water-intensive almond orchards thrive, while small-scale farmers and underserved communities face rising costs and restricted access. California's privatized water systems illustrate a stark imbalance. Corporate entities maintain consistent supplies, while public users bear the brunt of shortages. This system amplifies inequities and raises urgent questions about the sustainability of privatized water management as climate change worsens drought conditions. In Hawaii, water privatization has had devastating consequences. During the 2023 wildfires in Maui, delays in releasing water for firefighting efforts were linked to bureaucratic and privatization-driven hurdles, exacerbating the disaster. Decades of resource diversion for tourism and private agriculture have strained water availability, leaving ecosystems and communities vulnerable. The tragedy in Maui underscores the risks of prioritizing private interests over public safety. As climate-driven disasters intensify, Hawaii's experience is a dire warning about the human and environmental costs of mismanaged water resources. Across the country, water privatization reveals a consistent pattern of harm. From Michigan's depleted aquifers to California's drought-stricken farms, plus LA, which is now burned to the ground, and Maui's fire-scorched landscapes, privatized water systems have led to environmental degradation, economic inequality, and public disenfranchisement. Corporations prioritize profits, leaving taxpayers and communities to bear the costs of infrastructure upgrades and resource shortages. The stakes are clear. These crises will escalate without stronger regulations and a commitment to water as a public trust. Equitable management is essential to safeguarding this critical resource. Water must remain a public resource in order to prevent further harm. Policymakers must enact laws banning privatization, strengthening local governance, and recognize water as a fundamental human right. Conservation practices and sustainable management are key to protecting supplies and ensuring fairness. The stories from Michigan, California, and Hawaii are stark warnings. Water is not a commodity to be traded, but a shared resource essential for life. And we must act now to safeguard it for future generations. Now we're spotlighting Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook's billionaire CEO, and his controversial approach to content moderation. Critics argue that this approach is emblematic of a Silicon Valley ethos that values profits over people. From outsourcing critical jobs to relying on flawed automation, Zuckerberg's decisions are reshaping the digital workforce, and not for the better. Let's break it down. Facebook spends $500 million annually outsourcing content moderation to firms like Accenture. This strategy shifts responsibility for reviewing disturbing content onto third-party contractors, allowing Facebook to avoid directly employing moderators. By outsourcing, Facebook distances itself from the financial and psychological burdens of supporting workers, effectively treating them as expendable. These outsourced moderators face grueling conditions, reviewing harmful material daily with very little support. Despite a $52 million settlement in 2020 addressing these issues, Facebook continues its practice, prioritizing cost cutting over meaningful change. Zuckerberg's reliance on automation adds another layer of controversy. Facebook's content moderation algorithms have well-documented shortcomings. They often fail to detect harmful content and mistakenly flag innocuous posts. Zuckerberg acknowledges these flaws but continues to rely on automation instead of investing in a more robust human workforce. Why? Algorithms don't demand wages, healthcare, or job protections. This isn't innovation, it's avoidance. The result is a platform that prioritizes efficiency over accuracy, leaving users exposed to unchecked toxicity. The human toll on Facebook's outsourced moderation is severe. Workers tasked with reviewing graphic and harmful content often experience mental health issues, including PTSD-like symptoms. Reports have highlighted these conditions, yet Facebook continues to shift the burden to third-party firms, avoiding direct accountability. Facebook's approach underscores a broader pattern of neglecting worker well-being. For a company generating billions in profit, this level of disregard sends a clear message about its priorities. Zuckerberg's actions fit into a larger Silicon Valley trend, sidelining workers to maximize control. While many tech companies champion innovations as a driver of job creation, Facebook's strategy actively avoids it. By replacing human workers with algorithms and outsourcing, Zuckerberg sidesteps the risks of unionization or collective action. This is about maintaining control, not advancing technology responsibly. Zuckerberg's approach mirrors Silicon Valley's broader dismissal of labor, framing automation as progress while ignoring its human cost. Facebook often markets itself as a leader in economic opportunity, but its actions suggest otherwise. The company invests billions in speculative ventures like the metaverse, while underfunding essential roles like content moderation. Zuckerberg's focus on high-profile projects over foundational needs highlights a glaring disconnect between corporate messaging and reality. This misalignment reveals a pattern of prioritizing image and innovation over practical solutions that benefit workers and users alike. Mark Zuckerberg's decision at Facebook represent more than one company's failings. They reflect a troubling shift in corporate priorities across the tech industry. Facebook exemplifies a system that values profits over people by outsourcing labor, relying on flawed automation, and underinvesting in critical infrastructure. It reminds us that accountability matters, and workers, users, and society bear the cost of neglecting it. Thank you for joining me on the Bull Moose Network. From the labor reckoning reshaping workplaces across the country to the dangers of water privatization and corporate neglect, the stories we cover aren't just headlines. They're the realities shaping our communities, resources, and futures. The threads connecting these issues are accountability, justice, and the fight for dignity. Whether it's workers organizing for fair treatment, communities demanding water, or exposing the corporate exploitation of labor and resources, one thing is clear: change doesn't come from the top. The people drive it from the bottom. We'll be here to spotlight the fights that matter, the voices that need to be heard, and the truths that too often go ignored. I encourage you to stay informed, get involved, and make your voices count. Eyes open, voices loud. See you next time.